Hello Bee Club, it's the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July to everybody. It's been 2 weeks now since we've gone through the hives. It's been a cold, wet week, all week long, so there wasn't an opportunity where we could open up the hives and see what's going on. Today's a nice sunny day, it's about 70 degrees, so it's perfect time to open up the hives. Today, what I want us to focus on is how are the hives different after 2 weeks. Don't know what we're going to find out, as always when we open up these hives. This big one back here, there might be some extra honey that we could take away. The blackberry blossoms have just kind of ended, and that's the main nectar source for these bees here at the bee patch. Our swarm hive over here, what we anticipate is that there's going to be a lot more bees in there, and they may need a little bit more room. So I brought some another box and some extra frames that we could stack on top. So that's what we got today. I hope you enjoyed today's hive inspection, and most importantly, learned something about the honeybee. One thing I like to do before we open up a hive is just kind of check out the bees. Check out what kind of pollen they have on them when they're coming into the hive, and also how active they are. So let's check them out for a couple seconds. We're going to open up this hive first. Let's check it out. Last time we looked in here, we had just placed a new queen, and what we wanted to see if that the queen was out of her cage and the hive had not killed the queen, and if she was laying her eggs. And what we found out is that she was. So let's go in this hive and see what we got. So one thing that we noticed right away, Miss A has this instrument right here that measures the temperature inside the hive and also the humidity of the hive. Last week when we were checking out, getting the readings, we noticed that the humidity level was almost at 90%, which was odd. And what we've got right here is we got a bunch of mold that formed. It's a problem that bees have. Bees, they bring in nectar and then they evaporate the water to turn it into honey. Remember that magic number, 17%. They got to get the nectar to 17% water, and then it turns into honey. So where does all that water go? Well, we've got a closed box right here, so that water vapor comes and it just kind of sits in the hive. So that's a problem that beekeepers have to overcome. One thing that we may do is we may drill some holes in this box so we can allow water to go out. Another thing that we do is we put a box of wood chips on top of this, and then the water goes in the wood chips, and then we just change out the wood chips every now and then. But it's something that we have to take care of. Miss A went through the top box. In the top box, which is right over here, there was just a whole bunch of nectar and honey. We did steal one frame of honey, and we placed it in this box here that we're going to take home. Here in this next box, what we're noticing, first of all, is that there's mostly eggs and capped eggs. We'll keep looking and see what we can find. Miss A, what do you see on this frame?
On this frame, I see capped brood, and I see bees that have hatched, and I see that they've gone back and filled in some of those holes with nectar, which could be a little bit of a concern. I see late stage larvae ready to be capped, and then as we move that way, I do see a couple eggs. We won't see eggs over there because that wax isn't high enough to be a cell for a bee.
So what I'm going to do a couple times during this video is I'm going to go zoom in, and then what I want you to do is pause the video and then zoom in with your fingers and see if you can't see the individual eggs or larvae in the cell. So here I go. There. Can you stop the video now and see inside those cells and see if you can see some larvae and some eggs? Well, we're able to find them.
I see lots of eggs on your right.
So one thing I haven't shown in these videos is the dynamics of the hive. So Miss A took this frame out of the hive, and if I look down there, you can see that there's another box with other frames. And what we try to do is line the frames up so they're right over each other, so then the bees could just keep on walking up like this little tunnel. So that's how the bees move throughout the hive. This is about the 4th frame inside this second box, and you can see all this capped brood right here. So it appears that the queen's doing a great job laying her eggs. So as Miss A was turning over a frame, some nectar fell out of the holes. And you can check out this bee with its big long propolis is sucking up that nectar. Kind of cool. So in the second box, what we saw is we saw a lot of capped brood. Again, those are eggs that had hatched, and there's a larva, and then they put a little wax covering over them, and then it's going to metamorphosize into a bee. So now we're into our last box right here, the deep box. We haven't seen the queen yet. Hopefully she's in here. What we're seeing here is kind of more of the same. There's more of the capped brood right here. So go ahead and stop the video, look inside those cells and see if you can see some eggs. Well, can you see the queen? Where did she go? She went over on this side.
She's hiding.
There's the queen right there. She's got her blue dot on. She's doing a great job. We don't want to disturb her too much, so we're going to put her back. Well, we saw what we needed to see in this box. We saw that the queen was still doing a great job laying. We saw a whole bunch of capped brood. We found the queen. Now, rather than risking damaging the queen, what we're just going to do is put this box back together and put the hive back together. Then we're going to go on to this one. All right, now we're on to this hive. Remember, this is the swarm hive that we got. 2 weeks ago, what we noticed is that the queen was in here and she was laying eggs. Over here in our big hive, I said we had a moisture problem. I talked about the wood chips. So this is what I was talking about here. We left the box of wood chips on this hive. What we got to do is we got to do the same thing to our other hive. We have to go home, get a box of wood chips so it could absorb the moisture. So Miss A is going to take this thing apart. Again, what we anticipate is that the bees are going to start running out of room in here. Let's find out what we can find out. Well, Miss A, you just popped this box off and you notice a bunch of crazy comb. Can you tell us about it?
Yep, I call it crazy comb because it's a little bit crazy. It's also called burr comb. There was space between this box and the wood chip box, and so they started filling it in, and it looks like it's drone comb or comb for the male bees. I'm going to scrape it off and then...
How can you tell if it's drone comb?
Drone comb has bigger cells because the drones are bigger. They are longer, so they need a longer cell, and they also need a wider cell. And I'm going to scrape it off, take it home, and melt it down, and use the wax in soap or candles.
There we go. We take that off, and we got our little jar right here.
I put it in there with the bees, but the bees will fly out. Ah, beautiful. Lots of capped brood. They definitely have removed some of the eggs or the larva that they thought wasn't going to be good. But that's beautiful. Beautiful cappings on there. I'm going to flip over to the other side and see what I see. The queen in this hive isn't marked, so I might need to be a little more observant since it was a swarm we caught. Not all swarms have unmarked queens, but this one did.
So one of the goals of today's video, that I wanted you to see the eggs and larvae inside. So this is going to be our 3rd time now. Go ahead and pause the video and zoom in. See if there's not eggs or larvae inside those holes. Well, did you see any?
Yes.
So here's our last friend in the big box. Classic example of how the bees lay their eggs. They got the eggs kind of laid here in the middle, and then off here on the side there's a bunch of honey or nectar. You can see it kind of glistening in the sun. This box looks great. A whole bunch of eggs that have been laid. We haven't found the queen, but that doesn't mean that she's not here. She is here somewhere. We just couldn't find her. So this box looks great. A lot of eggs, a lot of capped brood, and just like we suspected, they need a little bit more room. So over here, I brought an extra box that we're going to take, and we're going to put it on top of this hive. Then we're going to wrap it up. Well, Miss A, we just kind of wrapped it up. What did you find out?
I found that they exceeded my expectations. I usually come here with low expectations because we've had such a rough spring, and the queens are laying a great pattern. The bees are hatching, they look healthy, they look like they're thriving, which is great.
So it's July 4th right now here at the pea patch. The blackberries are just finishing up their bloom. If I walk over here, you can see that there's just a couple blackberries. The blackberries here, these are kind of the last blooms right there, so there's not much more nectar for them. Good thing they have this pea patch right here where they can go around and get a lot of pollen and nectar to kind of survive the rest of the summer. We'll come back to these hives here in about 2 weeks. Have a great 4th of July, everybody.